After death, I transmigrated into a cannon fodder character in a novel, tasked with making the male and female leads consummate their relationship. Failure meant death. Cruise ships, horse ranches, gyms, the system kept popping up increasingly blush-inducing scenarios for me to choose from, until that day, when the male lead pinned me against the wall and kissed me breathless right in front of the female lead. He nibbled my earlobe and chuckled lazily, instead of teaching her so much. Why not demonstrate firsthand? Forced to give a personal demonstration, I still diligently completed the system's mission. However, the plot took an even more disastrous turn. I lay on the bed, wanting to cry but having no tears. System, why does the male lead keep kissing me? In my original world, I saved someone from drowning, but I ended up drowning to death. When I woke up again, a mechanical voice sounded in my head. This guy called System assigned me 2 tasks. Task 1. Teach the female lead about romance, seduce the villainous male lead George, and make them consummate their relationship. Task 2. Use love to redeem the male lead and prevent him from turning completely evil, thereby stabilizing this world. If I fail, I'll be utterly annihilated. After assigning the task, the system immediately gave me 3 options without hesitation. Please select plot. A. Burning passion. B. Bewildered infatuation. C. Irresistible desire. Countdown 5 seconds. No selection will result in random assignment. 4, 3, 2, 1. Randomly assigned plot. B. Passionate confusion. WH. What? I stared blankly at the options, my brain still processing. When the script appeared before my eyes, just a few lines of text determined the subsequent plot direction. My identity in this world is equivalent to an NPC, existing solely to drive the plot forward. I quickly adapted to the new world and welcomed the plot. 3 days later, according to the script. I've been cramming non-stop these past few days, blushing while earnestly studying the learning materials sent by the system. This morning, I passed on the techniques I learned to the female lead, the heroine Ruby, who has watched countless films, pretended to be shy and asked me, Miss Natalie, do I really have to wear this? On the bed lay a dress so sheer it barely concealed anything. Inexperienced in matters of love, pretended to be battle-hardened. Yes, exactly this set. Tonight we'll conquer him in one fell swoop, Ruby asked again. Then do I have to be on top first? I nodded emphatically. That's right, tame him, stir up his competitive spirit, and tonight's charity gala, I would disguise myself as a waiter, aiming to make George drink this extraordinary glass of wine, then deliver him to Ruby's room. The plot was written like this. That night, they would spend a wonderful evening. The progress went smoother than I had imagined. George took the glass of wine from the tray in my hand. I suppressed my trembling legs and pretended to be calm as I walked to the corner to observe him secretly. The light cast cold, sharp shadows on the man's deep contours. He held the glass in his hand, his fingertips casually rubbing the rim. It's not hard to understand why Ruby couldn't do without George. He possessed qualities that fascinated countless women, whether it was his face, physique, or wealth and power. Who could have known that this handsome man before me was the ultimate villain in this melodramatic business rivalry novel, destined to destroy everything and drag everyone down with him? As I waited anxiously, George finally tilted his head back and took a sip. The system. He drank it. I excitedly circled in my mind. I quickly sent a message to the female lead, telling her to drink it too. After a while, George suddenly frowned slightly. He handed his glass to his assistant beside him, said something to the people surrounding him, and then turned to leave the banquet hall. As George turned away, my gaze immediately shifted downward from his face, taking a quick glance there. System, has the male lead reacted? System, the darkening value hasn't changed much. Follow him. I made my way through the crowd, heading in the direction where the male lead George had left. I saw George standing in front of the elevator, holding his head as if he wasn't feeling well. System, ask him if he needs help. I hid behind the pillar, trembling. I'm scared. System, detected emotional fluctuations in key character. Target, George. Host's favorability rating updated. +10. Current favorability, 10 out of 100. Mild interest. There's even a favorability meter. Maybe he thought I looked kind when I delivered the wine. Hearing the system's words put me slightly at ease. So I stepped out from behind the pillar and walked toward George. George looked up at the sound and fixed his gaze on me, sharp as a blade. I was so nervous I nearly tripped over nothing but pretended to be calm as I approached. Sir, you don't seem to be feeling well. May I help you? George stared at me for a moment before slowly curling his lips into a smile. Yes, I suddenly feel unwell. Could you trouble yourself to take me to the lounge? Great, great, I thought happily. Heaven helps me indeed. This George seemed quite polite. So I followed him into the elevator. Sir, as soon as we entered the elevator, George suddenly pressed down on me for some reason. I was pinned by him in the corner of the elevator, my entire body enveloped by his tall frame. I couldn't help but hold my breath, goosebumps rising all over my skin. Did he realize there was something wrong with that drink? Sorry, I'm not feeling well and lost my balance. A low, husky voice sounded above my head, accompanied by an inexplicably pleasant fragrance that left me flustered. Hearing his words, I breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed he had indeed drunk it, and the drug was taking effect. Finally reaching the room door, I calmly swiped the card to open it. As long as Ruby drank that, the moment they met, sparks would fly. By then, I could retire with success. Thinking this way, my heart was once again filled with hope. However, upon opening the door and seeing the scene inside, I almost fainted. Ruby was seen with her hands and legs tied, eyes blindfolded, and mouth gagged, writhing frantically on the sofa like a fish awaiting slaughter. An overwhelming sense of oppression descended upon me from behind. The aura emanating from the man was nothing like the gentle weakness he had displayed in the elevator earlier. Instead, he resembled a ruthless, cold-blooded demon. George leaned down, exuding an extremely dangerous aura as he whispered with a low laugh in my ear, "Miss Natalie. Why that expression when seeing an old friend? System, what should I do? I'm going to die. Get in." Something hard pressed against the small of my back. It was a gun. To stay alive a little longer, I had no choice but to tremble my way into the room. MMPH. Ruby struggled violently upon hearing us enter. George ignored her completely, stopping beside a table. When I spotted the drugged glass of water on the table, my heart nearly leaped out of my throat. It seemed Ruby had been restrained before she could drink it. When had George realized something was wrong? George gently ran his fingers along the cup's surface, lifting his gaze to ask me, "What is this?" "Something that'll make you feel like you're in heaven." I pretended not to understand. "A cup filled with water. And what's in the water? What did you put in it?" he asked directly, and my heart was racing wildly, though I forced myself to appear calm on the surface. "Mineral salts, trace elements." George's lips slowly curled into a smirk, and the way he looked at me was like observing an amusing yet utterly defenseless kitten or puppy. His gaze gradually drifted downward, scrutinizing my body as if deciding where to start. My brain immediately sounded a top-level alarm. Damn it. This man who was ruthless and vengeful in the original plot, how is he going to torture me? George suddenly commanded me, "Come here, System, I might die right now." I walked over with the resolve of one facing death. George's dangerous gaze shifted away from me, glancing indifferently at the water glass as he said, "Drink it, drink it. If I drink that, it'll be disastrous." "Thank you, President George, I'm not thirsty." George dragged me over abruptly, and I crashed hard into his unyielding chest. The next second, a large hand gripped my cheeks forcefully, forcing my mouth open. "No, MMPH." A cold liquid slid down my throat as half a glass of water was poured into my stomach. Ahem. I bent over trying to spit out the water when an unfamiliar, scalding torrent erupted deep within my body, setting my blood ablaze in an instant. "System, what do I do?" I clutched my clothes tightly, desperately enduring this inhuman torment. A muffled sob laced with tears escaped through my tightly clenched teeth. "This effect is stronger than I imagined. My mind is already in chaos, but why does George stand out so much, as if the whole world consists only of him and me?" I can clearly see his throat move twice, and in those deep, ink-black eyes, something seems to be churning violently. Something touches my waist, making my brain stop functioning. Did he really drink? Let me go. Panicked, I only wanted to escape from here. George's hoarse voice sounded, desire surging in his eyes. "Don't leave, Miss Natalie, you've taught her so much. Why not demonstrate it yourself?" "No." I pushed him away forcefully and ran toward the door. He effortlessly dragged me back and pinned me against the wall, his fingertips brushing my neck as he spoke excitedly. "Why run? You'll make the perfect antidote." his icy lips pressed down with punishing force, roughly prying open my tightly sealed mouth. George's overwhelming presence shattered my consciousness in an instant. I was pressed firmly against the wall by him. He didn't know how much time had passed. It wasn't until I suddenly heard Ruby's struggling sounds beside me that I realized he actually kissed me right in front of the female lead. My whole being froze. How did the plot turn out like this? With the last bit of strength I had, I pushed George away. She's here. George chuckled softly, his large hand roaming across my back. Isn't this more exciting? Could ordinary satisfy you, Miss Natalie? I'm about to cry. I haven't even tried the ordinary ones. Actually, I had no experience at all. Before I could finish speaking, he lifted me into the air, anticipating what might happen next. I kicked and struggled with all my limbs. Bastard, let me go. George ignored me completely, carrying me swiftly into the bathroom. He threw me under the shower head and turned on the water without hesitation. Splash. The icy cold water poured over my head, sending a shiver through my body. My clothes were instantly soaked, clinging tightly to my skin and outlining my disheveled figure. He looked down at me, his pitch-black eyes swirling with beastly desire and an almost maddening possessiveness. Just as I thought he was trying to cool me down with cold water, my soaked shirt was wiped away by him. A surging heat wave swept over me again, fiercer and more frantic than before, amidst the chaos in my mind. A sudden notification sound rang out. Ding. Detected emotional fluctuation in key character. Target, George. Host's favorability value updated. Plus 20. Current favorability, 30 out of 100. Moderate interest. What? I widened my watery eyes, staring at the man before me in disbelief. I kicked him 4 or 5 times and slapped his arms several times. Why did his favorability still increase? The male lead's thought process truly isn't something a normal person can comprehend. Before I could process the absurd system notification, George suddenly pressed down on me, forcefully prying open my lips, turning my already chaotic mind into complete mush. The man's cold, hard, and aggressive face began to blur in the mist. He dragged me completely into the unfathomable depths of the sea, my consciousness shattering into irreparable fragments, gradually disappearing into the abyss. The endless rise and fall finally culminated as the whale expelled seawater. George pinned me against the wall, his voice hoarse and low as it emerged from his throat. If I had any sense left, I wouldn't do this last thing. He laughed quietly. Miss Natalie wouldn't cry, begging me to stop, right? I stared at him blankly, my consciousness still lingering in the depths of the sea. The smile at George's lips deepened slightly, completely. The last 3 words dissolved between their lips. Waking up with aches and pains all over, the room was empty except for me. But the sound of running water from the bathroom bluntly reminded me of what had happened last night. I felt like crying but had no tears left. The mission failed, the plot deviated. What should I do next? System, what do I do now? The mission failed. Does this mean I won't survive? System, critical character George's corruption level detected at 80%, decreased by 8%. Significant effect observed. Termination protocol not activated. Note. Host's favorability with critical character George has risen to 60%. I froze. Last night the favorability was only 30%. How did it jump to 60% today? System, what does this favorability mean? System, reason unknown. Preliminary judgment suggests it was triggered by drug-induced bonding. Woo-woo. Is there any antidote? I'll exchange it with points. Any amount is fine. I'll work hard to complete missions. System, no antidote available. Then every time I see George, I have to. System. Not necessarily. I breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. System, because the drug's effects will activate even if the two don't meet. I was completely stunned. You mean it could happen at any time? System, yes. Please be prepared at all times to cooperate with the male lead and stabilize his darkening value. How do I lower the favorability then? System, to reduce the male lead's favorability towards you, I suggest doing more things that would make him dislike you. A glimmer of hope rose in my heart, and I quickly asked the system, what does George hate? System, unknown. Hearing the system's worthless response, I buried my head under the blanket, utterly devoid of any will to live. Thinking back to last night, not only did I fail to accomplish anything, but I also ended up dragging myself down. I instinctively bit my lower lip. Then released it again in pain. My lips were bitten raw last night. Furious, I punched my pillow a few times. Shakily rising from bed, I supported my aching waist as I stepped over the mess on the floor to reach the dressing table, planning to change clothes and sneak away. New clothes lay on the table, and beside them scattered in pieces was the battle outfit I'd given Ruby, now torn to shreds. Hold on tight, Miss Natalie. Didn't you say you wanted to tame me? The words George whispered with a chuckle in my ear last night involuntarily surfaced in my mind, recalling those fragmented scenes from last night and looking at these torn pieces of fabric. My waist ached even more, and my heart grew colder. George, he knew everything. After changing clothes, I tiptoed past the bathroom and silently headed toward the door, but before I could even touch the doorknob, the heavy door was forcefully slammed shut by a large hand with a loud bang. Where do you think you're going? Hearing the deep, dangerous voice behind me, I froze in place, unable to move. The man behind me turned me around to face him, bracing his hands on either side to trap me in his embrace. What? Thinking of running after doing something bad? George had just finished showering, his upper body bare with only a towel wrapped around his waist, his muscles taut, smooth, and explosively powerful. My throat was dry and tight. I swallowed hard. Struggling to make a sound, he raised one hand, his fingertips gliding from my cheek to my neck, as if toying with a freshly caught prey. My heart was racing wildly. Lowering my gaze to avoid his unsettling stare, I struggled to maintain my composure and said, "Last night was an accident. Please forgive my rudeness, Mr. George. Just pretend nothing happened and forget it. I'll leave now and won't disturb you any longer." A cold glint flashed in George's eyes as his fingers gripping my chin suddenly tightened, forcing me to look up. His voice was icy. "Miss Natalie, do you say the same things to other men? Have you forgotten already by daylight?" System, key character George's corruption value at 85%, increased by 5%. Host, please correct your behavior. Hearing the system's notification about the blackening value, my vision darkened instantly. I hurriedly explained to George, "No, I'll remember everything." "Remember what?" George chuckled. "You begging for mercy, or using?" "No." I found myself at a loss for words. George lowered his head and planted a kiss on my neck. "You should have known the consequences the moment you sent me that drink last night." He traced his way up my neck, finally reaching my lips, and whispered, "Be at my beck and call from now on, understand?" At his beck and call. Even in my past life as an overworked laborer, I never felt this humiliated. But what if I refuse again and he gets angry enough to take my life? Just as my hope was fading, George suddenly straightened up and said, "Forget it." My eyes lit up. Was he going to let me off? The corner of his lips curled slightly as he looked at me teasingly. "You'll move in with me, what?" My eyes widened as I stammered, "Mr. George, this isn't appropriate." He didn't speak, released me, and walked back into the room, casually tossing aside the towel around his waist before picking up the clothes on the table and putting them on. I quickly averted my gaze, but couldn't help catching glimpses of the man's figure in my peripheral vision. "Pack your things." He fastened his shirt buttons, looked up at me with an unyielding expression in his eyes. "You're coming with me in 10 minutes. No, I need to lower his favorability so he won't want to see me. Mr. George." I tried to stop his crazy notion. "You see, last night you knew it was me, so keeping me at home isn't safe." George finished dressing and walked toward me, an overwhelming sense of pressure hitting me head-on. The corner of his lips curled into a faint smirk, as if he'd heard some absurd joke. "Do you still have the nerve to make sure you and the female lead become an established fact? Even if I don't have the nerve, I'll have to find it." System, what do I do now?" I frantically called out in my mind. System, beep. Mission directive, move into George's residence. Host, please execute. I was practically on the verge of tears. Wah, he clearly sees me as a plaything right now. Moving in would be like throwing a lamb to the wolves. System, target individual exhibits strong exploratory desire and preliminary possessive tendencies toward the host. This environment is conducive to reducing their corruption value. Host, please seize this opportunity. My head grew even bigger, however. What the system said seemed to make some sense. Living right under George's nose would at least allow me to keep tabs on his movements at all times. A faint glimmer of hope bubbled up amidst the quagmire of despair. At this point, there was no other way but to grit my teeth and push forward. getting him together with the female lead was my only path to survival. My room was arranged at the end of the second-floor corridor, right next to George's master bedroom. The entire manor resembled a massive, intricate machine, chillingly devoid of any human warmth. Every servant looked at me as if appraising a fragile object their master had whimsically brought home, uncertain how long it would last. Days passed in this eerie, high-tension calm. George is very busy, leaving early and returning late is his norm. In the vast manor, I exist like a ghost, apart from occasionally encountering George in the dining room or hallway. His unfathomable eyes would linger on me briefly. With no other inappropriate actions, that night's beast-like aggression in the bathroom seemed like nothing more than an absurd nightmare of mine. The nightmare's return is now. I curled up on the bed, consumed by restless heat, just like that night. Ugh, system, is the drug taking effect? Yes, the icy voice of the system echoed in my mind, yet it couldn't extinguish any of the rising heat. But George should be at the company right now. What should I do? Suddenly, the door was violently slammed open with a loud bang. George appeared in the doorway, his crimson eyes locking onto me with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. The desire in them was so thick it was unsettling. His body was taut like a fully drawn bow, every muscle silently screaming with desire. He stepped toward me, closing the distance until I could feel the astonishing heat radiating from him. Could smell the scorching warmth of his breath. An overwhelming fear seized me. Mr. George, I panicked and retreated until my back hit the headboard. Wait, George gripped my ankle and forcefully dragged me into his hunting range. A scorching kiss landed on my trembling shoulder. He leaned in to embrace me, his broad frame enveloping me completely. I trembled even more violently. George suddenly gently caressed my face, kissed my damp eyelids, his movements becoming tender, as if comforting me. Yet I could no longer think. The waves of heat within me surged violently, the seawater no longer cold but scalding like volcanic flames. Good, in my daze, a hoarse, deep voice whispered in my ear, accompanied by a slippery sensation at the tip of my ear. I closed my eyes, my hands weakly clinging to George's shoulders, silently consenting to everything that was about to happen. System detected key character George's current corruption value at 75%. Decreased by 5%. Favorability towards host at 70%, increased by 10%. Please complete the main quest as soon as possible. An absurd day, from the sun not yet set to the moon hanging high in the sky. The next day, waking up sore and aching all over, I heard the system's merciless notification tone. I must pull the derailed plot back on track as soon as possible. I climbed out of bed to wash up in the bathroom. Along the way, I noticed the single sofa that had been by the window was gone. My mind involuntarily flashed back to last night, and my face instantly flushed red. It was ruined. Please, the man gently nibbled my earlobe, his deep, seductive voice slipping into my ear canal like hypnosis and temptation. Baby, just like that, so good. The husky voice and the racing heartbeat made my mind even more muddled. His moist, scorching breath seemed to still linger by my ear, sending a sudden wave of panic through me. My legs weakened, and I nearly collapsed to the ground. How could I miss him a little? Yet the system didn't give me time to dwell, quickly sending over multiple choice questions. Please select the next plot location. A. Cruise ship. B. Locker room. C. Gym. Countdown 5 seconds. No selection will result in random assignment. 5, 4, 3. After diligently reviewing the dozen or so study materials the system provided me, I am no longer who I used to be. I quickly chose the first option, cruise. It had to be better than the other two. 2 days later, the massive private luxury cruise ship, Star, cut through the dark blue sea, its lights blazing brilliantly like a sleepless city floating on the water. George, as the absolute center of attention, was surrounded by all sorts of people, and I, now hidden in the shadows wearing the black gown George personally dressed me in, scanned the crowd with radar-like precision. Found it, at the edge of the dance floor, near a secluded porthole corner. Ruby stands alone in an elegant light blue evening gown. A few days ago, the system mentioned that George, for some unknown reason, didn't harm Ruby and even offered the Lincoln family a collaboration opportunity. Hearing this from the system made me think there's potential. George will ultimately be drawn to Ruby. I'm just an accidental NPC. Taking a deep breath, I avoided the crowd and quietly approached Ruby, from the hidden pocket in my gown. I pulled out a small prop exchanged from the system, Love Potion Effect X999, spraying this colorless, odorless perfume on the target would produce effects as its name suggests whenever the two got close. Just before George left, I had secretly sprayed the perfume on him. Standing about 2 meters away from Ruby, I carefully pressed the nozzle. The colorless, odorless fragrance quickly dispersed into the air. I immediately stepped back, my heart pounding wildly. Success. Now all I need is to figure out how to lure George over. I turned around, ready to go find George, but the moment I turned, my blood ran cold. George, he was standing less than 5 steps away from me. I hadn't even noticed when he arrived. Those deep, indifferent eyes fell upon my face, then slowly, ever so slowly, descended to the small bottle clutched tightly in my hand. Time seemed to pause at this very moment. The surrounding clamor of music and voices instantly grew distant and blurred, becoming meaningless background noise. I screamed silently in my mind, "System, why didn't you warn me, system?" Key individual George not detected approaching. Oh no, he must have seen me spraying something at Ruby. George strode toward me with his long legs. 1 step, 2 steps, his leather shoes made dull, rhythmic sounds against the polished deck, each step feeling like it was crushing my heart. Ah! I heard Ruby's exclamation behind me. Upon hearing her shout, everyone turned their gaze toward us. Hearing Ruby's cry, I realized that if George got just a little closer to her, the effect would take hold. Once it did, he wouldn't have time to deal with me anymore. With this thought, I quickly took several steps backward toward Ruby's direction, yet as I took a few steps back, the coldness in George's eyes deepened, freezing my feet in place as if rooted to the ground. I could only watch helplessly as George closed the distance between us step by step. He stopped right in front of me and suddenly reached out his hand. Instinctively, I turned my head away and shut my eyes tightly. The expected blow never came. Instead, he yanked me forward, sending me stumbling into his chest. Hard as iron, the cold aura emanating from George, mixed with a faint scent of alcohol, instantly overwhelmed me. I looked up in panic, meeting his unfathomable gaze. "George, what are you holding?" The corners of his eyes slightly curved, yet no trace of warmth could be found in their depths. "No, it's a bottle of perfume. How should I explain this?" Any explanation would be a dead end. George suddenly snatched the perfume from my hand, glanced at it briefly, and asked, "Is this how you use it? Give it BA." I stood on tiptoe trying to grab the small bottle back, but before I could finish, George aimed the perfume between me and him. He pressed the spray nozzle hard. No, the unstoppable fine mist sprayed over him and me. My body immediately reacted with that familiar sensation. The next second, under countless disbelieving gazes around us, George did something that left everyone stunned. He lowered his head and pressed his lips heavily against mine. This kiss was scorching and rough, as if declaring ownership to the world. George tightened his arm around my waist, pulling me deeper into his embrace. He slightly turned his head, his scorching lips almost brushing against my ear, his low laughter carrying a hint of obsessive possessiveness. "Miss Natalie, you have so many wonderful things." The scorching breath against my skin sent shivers down my spine. His voice grew increasingly hoarse. "I want to. What should I do?" The surroundings were deathly silent. The music in the dance hall still played, but it was as if everyone had been muted. Countless gazes focused on me, shock, envy, scrutiny, leaving me utterly humiliated. I could clearly see Ruby's delicate face not far away, drained of all color, her eyes filled with immense shock. The plot has spiraled even further out of control. Weak and powerless, I collapsed into George's arms, my heart utterly broken. Ding, value update. Current favorability, 85 out of 100. Extreme interest. Warning, target character's darkening tendency has simultaneously increased by 5 percentage points. Current darkening value, 75%. Host, please proceed with caution. The cold, mechanical voice of the system snapped me back to reality. Affection points increased again, but so did the corruption value. What on earth is this man thinking? These past 2 days, the cruise ship incident has been the hot topic in our circle, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I only managed to get out of bed today. Each time gets crazier. George remained very busy. Once I accidentally overheard 2 maids chatting. saying the master had been coming home much more frequently lately, which was putting them under a lot of pressure. It was then that I suddenly realized, I didn't know when it had started, but I'd grown accustomed to his arrival every night. Even if nothing happened, I would fall asleep nestled in his arms, lulled by his gentle caresses on my back. The plot had completely derailed. System, target individual George. Current favorability, 85 out of 100, darkening tendency, 70%, host. Please seize the opportunity to advance the core mission. The system's cold voice rang out as usual in its daily routine. Mission failure and plot deviation couldn't help but make me question my life. The next mission must be completed. I need to survive. Please select the next plot keyword. Broken bridge reaction. B. Restless and eager. C. Heart fluttering. Countdown 5 seconds. No selection will result in random assignment. 5, 4, 3. They all look quite similar. So I chose option A, broken bridge reaction. The system provided this script. George will go to the suburban horse ranch this Wednesday afternoon to discuss business. Please orchestrate an accident, one that will allow Ruby to coincidentally appear there and save the day. The precision control item in the system store, worth 1,000 points, became my only hope. It can create a brief incident. With duration accurate to the second, I secretly contacted Ruby, repeatedly assuring her that George and I weren't dating and that I had no interest in him whatsoever. She had almost given up hope, but her affection still outweighed her hatred for me, so that day, we agreed on all the plans for Wednesday at the racetrack. But for some reason, George was very aggressive that night, constantly asking me inexplicably, "Do you like this? Do you really like it?" In the end, he pushed me until I could only sob and say I liked it. I thought he had found out something. But his darkening value didn't change those days, so I felt relieved. On Wednesday afternoon, the sky was somewhat gloomy. Using shopping as an excuse, I left the manor early and arrived at the horse track fully armed. Ruby was already at the horse track. We passed by each other, pretending not to know one another. When George arrived, I would stage an accident to give him a minor injury while horseback riding, then have Ruby, who studied medicine, step forward to treat him in moments of crisis. When skin touches unavoidably and eyes meet unintentionally, it's easiest to spark that flutter of the heart. George appeared, unsurprisingly, shedding his suit and donning riding attire. The man's wild temperament was revealed in full force. One could almost see his firm, toned muscles through the clothes, just as heart-stopping as when he had been last night. I shook my head, pushing last night's images out of my mind, and refocused on the present. George was leisurely riding a black horse. His slow horseback ride was making me sleepy. I yawned, complaining to the system about how boring George's riding was, then turned and walked toward the rest area not far behind me. Just as I turned around, I heard a startled cry from behind. It was Ruby's voice. I quickly turned back, only to see George's black horse beneath him charging wildly toward me, completely out of control. "Move aside." George tugged at the reins and roared at me. I saw his body tense as he leaned back, his hands gripping the reins tightly, veins bulging on the back of his hands. It didn't seem at all like he was deliberately coming toward me. This horse was truly out of control. The horse's head was yanked high by the tremendous force, its front hooves thrashing wildly, but the uncontrollable momentum still sent it charging straight toward me as I ran. It was less than 10 meters away from me, and there was simply no way for me to evade, no matter how fast I ran. I couldn't outpace a runaway wild horse. The frenzied hooves were about to kick my back with tremendous force. In desperation, I immediately activated the item, precision control, hoping to accurately dodge the horse's attack. The moment the item was activated, I threw myself violently to the ground. "Natalie," George's unusually panicked voice rang in my ears, seemingly filled with deep fear. The expected back pain never came, so I turned to look. I saw George putting all his strength into pulling the right rein while leaning desperately to the left, trying to redirect the runaway horse. From his furrowed brow, it was clear how violently his right arm was being wrenched by brute force and how excruciating pain surged through him. The next second, the fiery horse beneath him suddenly collapsed as if losing consciousness, and George tumbled onto the grass from the momentum. I widened my eyes, watching helplessly as George fell hard from his horse onto the ground. I wanted to rush over to check on him, but my body wouldn't move. The stable staff sprinted toward him, and Ruby, who was closest to George, arrived first. "George, are you okay?" Ruby's voice was frantic as she hurried over to him, her gaze landing on his bleeding arm, filled with concern. "Oh my God, you're bleeding, let me see." Seeing Ruby crouching beside George with a tense expression, my heart suddenly tightened as if gripped by an invisible hand, waves of stinging pain surging through me. I kept telling myself, I'm just completing a mission, and now that it's done, I should be happy. At this moment, all I wanted was to escape. I immediately got up from the grass, ignoring the pain in my ankle, and limped away. "Natalie." Suddenly, George's voice came from behind me, gritted with teeth, thick with anger, yet seemingly mixed with the emotion of something lost and found. I was nailed to the spot, my blood as if frozen, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. I didn't turn around, but the footsteps behind me grew closer and closer, each step trampling on my taut nerves. He stopped right behind me, time seeming to stand still, yet I could clearly feel a breath tinged with the scent of blood brushing against my neck. Yet what reached my ears wasn't furious accusations, but words tinged with vulnerability and pleading. "Natalie, don't leave me." Hearing his words, my previously aching heart softened involuntarily, and an indescribable emotion welled up within me. I turned around and looked at his bleeding arm, unable to resist raising my hand to check his injury. "Mr. George, your wound." "George, you're still bleeding." Ruby's voice interrupted our conversation. I raised my hand, about to lower it, when George caught it in his grasp. The next second, George's gaze shot fiercely toward Ruby, his tone dangerously cold. "Who gave you permission to touch her?" What, was he saying that to me or? Ruby froze just a few steps away from us. I couldn't see her expression, but I could clearly sense her fear. George stopped looking at Ruby, fixing his entire gaze firmly on me. After a moment, he spoke mercilessly. "Get rid of her." Two men suddenly rushed out from the crowd, dragging Ruby away forcefully. Ruby struggled and shouted, "It wasn't me, George. Natalie was the one who called me here. She set this whole thing up herself." George stared at me without blinking. I closed my eyes, resigned to my fate. I was the one who called her here. It's my fault. Even though I hadn't done anything yet, I was just as baffled by the horse suddenly going out of control. George's eyes were sharp as blades. "Are you saying you fed the horse aphrodisiacs, making it lose control and attack you?" I blinked. "Actually, no." George gave a faint, and made a gesture. Ruby was dragged away screaming by two burly men. I panicked. You can't do this. Murder is illegal." George didn't respond, merely curling the corner of his lips slightly as he looked at me. That smile was unmistakably chilling. Frowning, I said sternly, "What are you laughing at? How can you just casually?" Before I could finish speaking, George suddenly sealed my lips. Amidst the mingling of breath, he murmured lowly, "She wanted to kill you, and you want to spare her." I was kissed breathless by him and muttered gloomily, "Then let the law deal with it." George fell silent for a moment, then smiled faintly, his laughter tinged with a hint of resignation. "Fine, I've always known. This is just like you, just like me." I was still pondering what George meant by those words when he suddenly scooped me up in his arms. I instinctively struggled. "Put me down." He tightened his embrace and slowly lowered his head, his eyes darkening slightly. "You're hurt." Yet, he was injured too. Remembering the blood flowing from the wound on his arm, I had no choice but to obediently stop resisting and let him handle me. I sprained my ankle, while he suffered a muscle strain in his right arm and superficial abrasions. Two injured souls were sent back to George's residence. That evening, we helped each other take a bath, although I was forced into it. After bathing, we lay on the same bed. I turned my back to George, and he wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his injured hand on my waist. There are clearly so many secrets between us, yet he didn't ask anything, until I couldn't hold it in anymore and finally asked him, "Don't you have anything you want to ask?" "Yes." Hearing the man's immediate reply, my heart tightened. What should I ask? What should I ask? George's warm lips brushed against my shoulder, but his tone was icy cold. "What I want to ask is, what exactly is going on in your head?" Hearing George's question, my body stiffened even more. What's going through his mind? Has he discovered the system? But how did he find out? Or maybe not. He might just suspect there's something wrong with my IQ. I took a deep breath and cautiously asked, What do you mean by that question? George chuckled lightly. Can it hear our conversation right now? My heart began to grow cold, outwardly calm. I said, what do you mean? I don't understand. His mind was frantically calling out to the system. System, system, what's going on? System, I didn't have time to tell you at the racetrack. The moment you fell, I could no longer detect any data related to George. How could this happen? System, the reason is unknown. Natalie, are you communicating with it? The man behind me suddenly spoke, interrupting my conversation with the system. I chuckled nervously. I really don't understand what you're talking about. George laughed softly a few times, then gently bit my earlobe. Can it see and hear us when we're doing it? I hadn't thought about that. Every time during those moments, the system would become silent. System, automatic shielding is enabled. Hearing the system's reply, I breathed a sigh of relief but immediately became more alert. System, he seems to have noticed you. Aren't you nervous? System, I can no longer detect his data. Regarding future plot developments, I cannot interfere. So what should we do now? System, unknown. In short, as long as he doesn't want to destroy this world, any plot development is possible. Finished talking, George suddenly asked by my ear. Haven't finished? No, I instinctively answered, then quickly corrected myself upon realizing, aren't we still talking? George smiled even wider. We are. He pulled me closer, nibbling on my reddened earlobe and whispering, Natalie, stay in this world. Okay, what? My expression froze instantly. My eyes widening in shock. What exactly does he know? What do you mean? George turned me over, and I didn't dare to look at him at all. Burying my head in the pillow, George lifted my chin with 2 fingers, gazing at me with profound intensity. This afternoon, when you were nearly trampled by the horse, a voice suddenly echoed in my mind. It told me that if I wanted you to live, I had to abandon my plan to destroy this world. His gaze grew increasingly intense. A hint of pain I couldn't understand hidden in his eyes. Natalie, I agreed. I froze completely, staring at him in stunned silence. Yet what he said next left me even more dumbfounded. It finally did one thing right after all these years. George gently kissed me. Natalie, I've missed you so much. Has the plot deviated beyond all recognition? Why can't I understand what George is saying anymore? Missed me? What do you mean? I couldn't help but ask. George saw my blank expression and gently touched my face. Natalie, 5 years ago when the apocalypse came in our world, we were all pulled into this space. At first, we stayed together, completing missions in different worlds, until one day, George's expression turned terrifying. You died and disappeared. I died. You're not wrong. I did indeed die. After that day, I went mad. I destroyed its worlds one after another, he said, looking at me with obsessive and frenzied eyes. I just want you to come back to life, to return to me. Every time I enter a new world, I forget who I am, losing all my memories, but the thought of destroying its world stays in my mind. Only by returning to that space can I recall my entire life in that world. George held me tightly, burying his face in my embrace, but after regaining my memories, I'm in so much pain. I miss you so much, baby. I miss you so much. My aching heart seemed to share his feelings, and I deeply sensed his pain. He told so many stories about us, stories of how we loved each other, yet, I have no memory of any of it. My mind is in chaos, my heart pounding wildly. My body is completely stiff. Is what he's saying true or false, and am I dead or alive? What is this world? Yet inexplicably, I believe him deep down. As he recounts the story between us, my body's reactions seem to return to the past. Excitement, happiness, pain, and sorrow intertwine, composing everything that once was. Seeing my silence, George gently strokes my back. Don't be afraid, baby. As long as you stay by my side, this world is safe. Let's stay here forever, okay? All confusion remains unresolved. I truly died and came back to life. Perhaps this world never had truth or falsehood to begin with. George spent 5 years in space, yet he lived lifetime after lifetime in different worlds. How did he endure all those years? I dare not even think about it. The mere thought of those possible scenes immediately sends sharp pain surging through my heart. No matter what, whether memories are lost, whether it's real or fake, being alive is enough. I took a deep breath, raised my head, and looked at George seriously. After a long pause, I sighed softly and said, "All right, I want to stay in this world, with you." George's pupils dilated as he hugged me tightly in excitement, giving me a deep kiss. "Baby, do you remember now?" I shook my head. "I'm sorry, I don't have any memories of us." A flicker of disappointment flashed in George's eyes as he held me even tighter. "It's okay, baby, now you do, and there will be more in the future." My thoughts were still in disarray as I responded softly, "Baby." George's tone turned serious. I lifted my head to look at him, blinking my eyes. George's gaze carried a hint of danger as his large hands slowly traced my back. He said solemnly, "Baby, it seems the effects of that medicine are kicking in." I widened my eyes, realizing the thing pressing against my waist was gradually growing larger. "No." I pressed my hands against his chest and pushed him away forcefully. "Your hand is injured." George grabbed me and flipped me over with strength. The next second, I found myself sitting atop him, the corner of his lips curled into a dangerously charming smile as he murmured in a low, husky voice, "Then, baby, why don't you try taming me?" I carefully traced the contours of his handsome face, capturing the love shining in his eyes, then slowly leaned down to press my lips against his. "At least, to live, to love, is enough." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My mom is a big shot in J City, decisive and authoritative. My dad is a young and charming tea master, strong yet delicate. Many handsome uncles sneered at my dad, just a plaything in bed. Do you really think she'll marry you? Why do they always have to hit my dad where it hurts? My father was heartbroken and secretly bankrupted these uncles, all while making sure my mother wouldn't find out. By day, he charmed babies and dominated the business world. By night, he played the green tea role to seduce my mom, while lecturing others. Dad would mutter under his breath, "I'm just putting on an act, but I'll keep it up in front of her for a lifetime." Little did he know, my mother was holding me upstairs, smiling nonchalantly. "Susan, as long as it benefits you, learn to turn a blind eye." Since childhood, I knew mom was a high-status big shot in J City, while dad was a two-faced green tea gold digger. Dad's greatest wish every day was to follow mom around like a dog at her beck and call, preferably staying by her side every moment. Even at banquets, I watched mom in her sleek champagne-colored suit, holding a wine glass as she stood at the center of the crowd, chatting and laughing effortlessly while handling endless social engagements, curled up in dad's arms. I gazed adoringly at our wife/mom alongside him. Just any stray cat or dog can waltz in these days. Sarah must be really giving them face. Some people shouldn't get too full of themselves just because they've climbed a branch or two. You're nothing but a plaything in bed. Don't fool yourself into thinking Sarah would ever marry you. I know, Dad says these uncles are just sour grapes. They don't even get the chance to be mom's lapdog. But even so, Dad still sneaks to my bedside late at night, crying and muttering to himself, "We even have a child together. Why won't she give me a proper title?" I lazily yawned, and instantly, everyone's attention shifted to me. The aggressive uncles suddenly became warm and friendly. "Little Susan sleepy. Uncle will take you to find mommy." "Baby Susan, Uncle will take you to buy a new dress and have yummy food." "How about Uncle also becomes your daddy?" I promised to treat baby Susan extra special. Dad's face darkened like coal, then suddenly broke into a radiant smile. "So what if it's just bedroom fun? At least it's better than some who can't even qualify as dogs." She chose to have Susan. She loves me. She absolutely adores me. I rested my chin on my hand and sighed. I've been through this kind of situation too many times. Privately, Dad and my uncles are all mature, steady, and decisive, but the moment they're together, they turn into childish fools. The uncles' faces darkened with childish carelessness. They stepped on Dad's toes, bumped into his shoulders, and when a wine glass fell to the ground, all the strange glances in the room landed on Dad, some probing, some sizing him up, and some just waiting for drama. Too bad the uncles didn't realize that my dad isn't just lovesick, he's also a master of playing the victim. Dad's eyes turned red like a little rabbit's as he gazed timidly at Mom, biting his lower lip nervously. His hands trembled slightly as he held mine, and he glanced around uneasily. "Sarah, I know I'm not good enough and embarrassed you, Maybe I shouldn't come to events like this anymore. But Susan is still young, remember to come home early. She always cries when she can't see her mom, and I miss you too. With tears in his eyes, Dad reluctantly hugged me and walked toward the door. Sigh, I'm just a pawn in Mom and Dad's little game. The wine glass lightly tapped against the table, and the room fell silent. Everyone kept their eyes downcast, waiting for Mom's reaction. Mother casually tucked her hair behind her ear, her bright eyes and radiant smile captivating, yet the aura around her compelled involuntary submission. Then who dares to make you leave? Father suddenly turned around while holding me, then looked down at me with a bitter smile. Sarah, what am I? After all, I'd better not disturb you. A hot-tempered uncle couldn't stand it anymore. Sarah, with so many people here tonight, it's not worth it for a mere plaything. Mom's smile grew even brighter, and I silently mourned for this uncle in my heart. The brighter the smile, the more precise the strike. The gentle uncle scolded him softly under his breath, then handed Mom a glass of warm water. Sarah, don't get caught up in something with no future. Mom didn't take the water. Instead, she walked up to Dad, her eyes crinkling as she pinched my chubby cheek. Who says there's no future? Our marriage is none of your concern. The arms holding me stiffened slightly. He looked down at Mom, the curve of his lips growing wider and wider. Dad's face was beaming with joy. On the way home, Dad was unusually different. He kept hugging and kissing me excitedly, glancing at Mom with excitement, and finally secretly holding Mom's hand. After getting home, Dad was even more absent-minded. He hurriedly finished reading me a storybook. Sweetheart, you'll have to put yourself to sleep early tonight. Dad needs to go claim his rightful status. Tomorrow, I'll buy you whatever you want. Snuggled under my little blanket, I watched Dad's gleeful retreating figure and pouted. Mom always says men's sweet words are nothing but lies. Unfortunately, Dad was destined to be disappointed. I lay sprawled on Mom's fragrant, soft body, while Dad stood resentfully at the door hugging a pillow before leaving grudgingly. Mom absent-mindedly pinched my cheek and asked, Sweetie, do you know why they were ganging up on Dad tonight? I buried my face blissfully against Mom's neck and took a deep breath. Because those uncles all like Mom, so they don't like Dad. Wrong. What they like isn't Mom, it's the company behind her, the benefits, and the value she can bring them. The same goes for why Dad was ganged up on. I looked up at Mom and nodded with partial understanding. She smiled, ruffled my hair, and gently patted my back to lull me to sleep. Susan, as Mom's daughter, you're not a princess but a queen. You must stand at the highest point to be admired. Mom will give you everything you need. Resources, connections, money, and power. But I can't always be by your side. Do you think Mom is failing you, sweetheart? I wrapped my arms around Mom's neck and protested in a sweet, childish voice. Mom is the best mom in the whole world. Susan loves Mom the most. Mom gazed at me for a long time, and finally held me tightly in her arms without saying a word. Mom went on a business trip, and Dad seemed like a completely different person again. No more white shirts, jeans, or white sneakers. Instead, he wore a well-fitted black suit and thin-soled red-bottomed shoes. His hair, once neatly combed down, was now slicked back, transforming him from a harmless pretty boy into an intimidating boss. Every time Mom went on a business trip, Dad would undergo this transformation, holding me in one arm and his laptop in the other. He'd be followed by several uncles and aunts who kept reporting to him non-stop. President Lincoln, the funds for the company's project department selected last week have been secured. The investment department recommends conducting a second round of risk assessment. President Lincoln, we've narrowed it down to 3 companies, 1 gaming company, 1 new energy tech firm, and 1 AI innovation startup. President Lincoln, the unicorn company from our previous round of investment has already turned a profit. Should we continue investing? Dad walked briskly while handling company matters, not forgetting to reach out and adjust my milk bottle. No slacking. Finish your milk and aim to grow 3 centimeters taller before your mom gets back. Invest directly in the AI industry, no longer follow-on investments. Sell off the existing stocks in hand. Oh, and make sure to sell these stocks specifically to the Lewis family. Cut off cooperation with them too. Let them find someone else more capable. As I drank my milk, I thought to myself that another uncle was about to have bad luck. In less than half a month, the hot-tempered uncle came begging at Dad's office door. while I lay on the floor resignedly as Dad dressed me up, soon to be paraded in front of Mom to act cute. Should I wear the bear costume or the bunny one? Let's go with the bunny. Last time I wore it, your mom praised my taste. The uncle outside barged in, seeing Dad and me frozen in place, until Auntie Secretary snapped him out of it. It's you, you're the one who sabotaged me on purpose. Dad adjusted his hoodie and flashed a smile at the uncle. How could that be? Someone as worthless as me wouldn't dare compare to you. The uncle's tiger-clawed face tightened repeatedly, but in the end, he bent his waist. President Lincoln, I was blind not to recognize Mount T and offended you. Please be merciful and spare my life. The Lewis family is willing to concede another 5% profit. I leaned on Dad's shoulder. Mom was right. As long as you hold enough benefits in your hands and stand high enough, people will naturally flock to and adore you. The proposal lightly slapped the uncle's face. Dad widened his eyes innocently, but his lips curled with coldness. Still dreaming of being my daughter's father? Who gave you the nerve? What happens between her and me is none of your business. Presidently, you'd better wish us an early marriage and eternal happiness. The uncle also knew Dad wouldn't let him off, so he deliberately stabbed at Dad's sore spot. Lucas, does Sarah know her biggest rival is the man lying beside her? Ha ha ha, Lucas, I'll be waiting for the day she abandons you. The smile vanished from Dad's face, his entire demeanor turning utterly gloomy, even his eyes filled with malice. He grabbed Uncle by the collar and delivered a fierce kick. Before Dad could strike again, I shook my smartwatch. Dad, we're going to be late. Like a chameleon, Dad instantly exuded the aura of a pretty boy, lightly patting Uncle's cheek as he warned, if any inappropriate words get out, I'll skin you alive. Dad acted fearless in front of Uncle, but deep down, he was panicking like crazy. Standing at the arrival's gate, muttering to himself, what if Mom discovers his true colors? I'll have to speak up for him, at least considering all these years he spent raising me. He even escalated to asking me, if Mom and Dad were to separate, would I choose Dad or Mom? Better stick with Dad. Holding a hostage means your mom won't dare ignore me. Curled up lazily in Dad's arms, I yawned. But Mom already knew, didn't she? Since I can remember. My mother taught me to prioritize personal career above all else, that there are no permanent men, only permanent careers, that freedom is built upon having enough money, and that a career is the foundation of earning it. Mom said she knew Dad's true nature even before she became pregnant with me, no matter how tightly Dad tried to conceal it. Secrets always find their way out. At the time, she cut her business trip short to surprise him, only to witness Dad stepping into a limited edition Lexus, heading to an auction. The auction staff respectfully ushered him into a private room. The man who had been gentle and tender in front of her now carried an icy, unapproachable aura that was almost intimidating to meet eye to eye. She sat silently in the private booth reserved for the Green family, flipping through the auction catalog with casual yet keen interest, wondering whether the person lying beside her was human or ghost. The finale was a top-grade imperial green hairpin, translucent, vibrant, and made from exceptionally rare material on the market. What made it even more precious was its delicate hairpin design. Bidding voices rose one after another without pause. When the price reached $120 million, the man in the neighboring booth finally spoke. $200 million, at that moment. She couldn't quite name the emotions swirling inside her, anger at being deceived, self-mockery at having seen it coming, or regret for misjudging someone so completely. She playfully added $1 more, and the private box beside her fell into prolonged silence, with faint sounds of chairs hastily toppling over. In the end, that hairpin was secured by her for a price of $200,001. She stayed at her friend's place for 2 days, thoroughly investigating every clue until she had uncovered everything. It must have been quite humiliating for this prominent figure of City J. No wonder he was so elusive. Turns out he had been living right under her roof. She calmly followed her original plan and returned home, sizing up the house fairy in her residence, wearing a hoodie, shorts, and slightly tousled hair. With a Hello Kitty apron tied around his waist, the man tugged uncomfortably at the hem of his hoodie, shyly biting his lower lip, yet his eyes were filled with unease. Sarah, did you just get back from your business trip? I think I saw you on the road. In that instant, she curved her lips into a smile. You must have mistaken me for someone else. I just got off the plane and I'm exhausted. Maybe you should pick me up next time. She wanted a child, and naturally, she needed a man with good genes. As it turned out, her mother's decision was the right one when her mother was pregnant. Her father couldn't bear to be more than a step behind her. During childbirth, her father clawed at the delivery room wall, leaving bloody marks all over it. Mom said Dad was also quite a good father. At first, they hired a top-tier maternity nurse to take care of me, but even the best nurse can slip up. When I suddenly had a fever in the middle of the night, Dad was the first to notice. Mom said she had never seen Dad like that before, eyes bloodshot, pressing the accelerator to the limit while his hands and feet trembled, stumbling into the emergency room with me in his arms, standing there alone all night. After that, Dad stopped relying on others altogether, handling everything from feeding and diaper changes to soothing me himself. Even now, Dad still goes to the children's room every night to gently touch my face, afraid I might fall sick in the middle of the night. The aunts joked with Mom, asking her to introduce them to a high-quality resource, like Dad. Cost wasn't an issue, since what they lacked least was money. Mom doesn't expose Dad's true nature either. After all, my dad is young, clean, full of energy, takes care of the kids and the household, and does it all for free. Why wouldn't she take advantage of that? Even most of the uncles who deliberately provoke Dad don't sit well with Mom. She's more than happy to see them get put in their place. Mom calls this killing with a borrowed knife. I looked up at Dad's sharp jawline and felt an inexplicable surge of sympathy for him. What a pitiful man. But Dad is convinced Mom adores him, that she's willing to be with him and even had his child. Mom must really love him. People were coming out of the international exit one after another. Dad stood on tiptoe, holding flowers in one hand and a baby bottle in the other. Eagerly waiting, I pursed my lips and decisively joined him. I missed Mom too. Hot-tempered uncle's words struck a chord with Dad. After returning home, Dad stuck close to Mom, pretending to be calm but unable to hide his anticipation as he asked, "Susan is getting older. When teachers ask who I am at parent-teacher meetings in the future, how should I answer?" Mom flipped through emails on her tablet without looking up. "You're her dad, I'm her mom." Dad fell silent for a moment, then leaned his head weakly on Mom's shoulder and said, "Sarah, what if they ask about our relationship?" Mom put down the tablet and looked at Dad with a half-smile. "Of course, it's parenting partners." I sat on the carpet, almost hearing Dad's heart shatter. Ever since Mom said those words at the last dinner party, Dad has been oscillating between excitement and anxiety. Could this be menopause? But Dad is still young. Dad kept probing desperately, and I felt awkward and heartbroken for him. "Sarah, they say a man should establish a career before starting a family, or start a family after establishing a career. If I had a decent career, shouldn't I also consider getting married?" Mom patted his cheek and mercilessly crushed Dad's last shred of hope. "It's normal to have big ambitions and want to fly, but remember one thing. I despise deception most of all, understand?" My dad nodded, smiling more bitterly than crying, and secretly held me in his arms at midnight, shedding tears as he asked me what to do. I numbly stared at the stars above, which were said to have been painstakingly glued one by Dad, sighed deeply, and patted his shoulder. "Dad, you're already amazing. At least Mom only has you as her man now." As a result, my dad cried even harder. He was determined to make Mom see his irreplaceability. Dad chose to immerse himself in work, waking up early to cook for Mom but stubbornly refusing to see her off, sneaking me along to the company like a thief. The uncles and aunties at the company groaned in misery. Who could understand the boss's sudden burst of ambition? A month's work got done in a week. Secretly, they prayed to the gods for smooth sailing and sweetness in the boss's love life, or else they couldn't take it anymore. Dad was determined to give Mom the cold shoulder, but the moment Mom called for him at night, he'd scurry over like a neglected concubine eager to serve, claiming she couldn't do without him. I secretly complained to Mom about Dad's duplicity, and Mom pinched my little nose, laughing. "Susan, that's just how people are. Focus on yourself, refine yourself, and everyone will make way for you. You are Mom's daughter, and in the future, you'll stand on Mom's shoulders to see a bigger world." Our little Susan must have complete control over herself and not be easily influenced by others. Hugging Mom's neck tightly, I nodded vigorously. "When I grow up, I want to be just like Mom, wearing a suit, stylish and carefree." Mom went on another business trip, and Dad became as cold and unfeeling as if he'd been gutting fish at our T-Mart for 10 years. This coldness became even more apparent when things went wrong. Dad, who never took me to social events, even brought me to a work gathering. The tea house had a nice ambience. But Dad was in a terrible mood. Several uncles who admired Mom teamed up to set a trap, determined to expose Dad's facade. The uncle sitting at the head held himself arrogantly on the chair. President Lincoln, long time no see. President Lincoln has kept this hidden quite well. Such courage and composure are unmatched by ordinary people. It seems the Green family will inevitably fall into President Lincoln's hands sooner or later. I looked up and saw a familiar figure, surprised. I widened my eyes and slowly climbed the steps one by one, happily nestling into my mother's arms. Downstairs, Dad and the uncles had reached a boiling point. Lucas, does Sarah know you're faking it? She hates being lied to the most. Dream on if you think you can stay by her side. Father was seeing red. Damn it, I'll keep up this act. I can pretend in front of her for a lifetime. Little did he know, Mother was holding me upstairs, smiling nonchalantly. Susan, as long as it benefits you. Learn to turn a blind eye. The beaten uncle laughed triumphantly, shouting toward the private booth upstairs. Sister Sarah, you saw it all, didn't you? Father froze in place. The moment he locked eyes with Mother upstairs, panic overwhelmed him. He instinctively moved to go up but stopped abruptly for some reason. Mom lowered her gaze and taught me. But some things, once brought into the open, naturally must be resolved as they should be. Dad was kicked out of the house. Along with his bedding and all, I pressed against the large floor-to-ceiling window, watching Dad stand alone outside the house, his eyes red from crying, frantically calling Mom on his phone. Mom sat at her desk, completely focused on her work. On my own, I picked up Mom's phone and answered the call. Sarah, you can't treat me like this. I can explain everything. Please let me in, I replied softly. Daddy, it's Susan. Dad's voice faltered, caught between tears and laughter. Sweetheart. Is Mommy still working? Remind her to take breaks. Okay, there's salad Daddy made in the fridge. Don't kick off your blankets tonight, and don't forget your milk. I looked up at Mom. She had paused her work and was gazing absently out the window, lost in thought. I know Mom works very hard. She says women always have it much tougher than men in this world. They have to be 1,000 times more outstanding just to get the same opportunities as men. Also, I can start from a higher baseline in life. Mom isn't the only heir in the Green family. She has to work incredibly hard to secure her position at the helm of Green Group. I'll take care of Mom, and you take care of yourself too, Dad, I whispered, sneaking a glance at Mom. Dad, Mom's secretly watching you. Dad was kicked out of the house, but the Lincolns approached the Greens with a proposal full of sincerity. Dad sought a meeting with Mom. Mr. Green, Lincoln Co. has shown full sincerity in this collaboration, which brings us nothing but benefits. I just don't understand. Lincoln Co. started with venture capital, and Lucas himself is practically a ghost. Given Green Group's massive scale, we don't seem like an ideal partner for them. Mom skimmed through the proposal casually and said, since they're the money gods, why wouldn't we welcome them? You're in charge of this project. I immediately grasped Mom's underlying message. Take the deal if it comes. But don't even think about meeting face to face. Dad was still a bit naive, or rather, he'd always be outplayed by Mom. Dad's not at home, but life goes on, and kindergarten must still be attended. Mom wasn't comfortable with me going to kindergarten alone, so she made sure to pick me up and drop me off every day, even when she was busy with work. There were always sweet aunties to take me home. The moment I saw Dad at the kindergarten gate, I leaped into his arms. Dad, when will Mom forgive you? Completely unaware that I had just stabbed my old man right in the heart, I was lost in happiness, until Dad tried to sneak me away. Baby, call your mom and tell her you've been kidnapped by me. Dad, you're so childish. It turns out old tricks work if they're effective. The moment Mom stepped into the house, Dad, 3 parts tipsy and 7 parts acting, transformed into a whimpering puppy clinging to her, apologizing. Sarah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have deliberately kept it from you. I was just scared you'd leave me if you found out. Hit me, scold me, do whatever you want. Just don't ignore me. Sarah, I've missed you so much. Mom bent down to pick me up, staring straight at Dad. Lucas, if I hadn't found out, How long were you planning to keep this from me? Dad was speechless. He would have kept it hidden forever, until Mom could never leave him. The moment Mom turned around, the entire house clicked shut with a snap, remaining locked no matter how hard she pushed. Dad stood there holding vibrant red roses, his eyes pitch black. Sarah, why won't you let me take good care of you? I can do your laundry, cook meals, clean the house, take care of you and Susan. I can even manage assets with guaranteed profits. Why won't you hire me? I only have a little love, just a little of your love. Mom let out an angry sneer as Dad carried me upstairs to the children's room, stocked with food, drinks, and surveillance. The entire house was soundproofed, but faintly. I could still hear chairs and tables crashing, Mom's shouts, and Dad's muffled groans. As I lay bored in bed contemplating life, Dad tiptoed in. The moment our eyes met, silence fell. Mom was right. A man's words are as deceitful as ghosts. Honey, Dad disagrees with that. You're contributing to our family harmony. Don't you want Mom and Dad to make up? I sat on my little stool watching Dad cook enthusiastically in the kitchen, his bare back covered in scratches, his face still bearing the mark of a slap. While the living room lay in complete shambles, Dad hummed a tune and happily carried a plate upstairs to deliver food to Mom, hitting his affection, scolding his love. Your mom loves me. She really, really loves me. Halfway up the stairs, he came running back down with heavy footsteps. Sweetheart, if anyone dares to bully you with such nonsense, beat them up hard, no matter what happens. Daddy's got your back. Mom didn't come downstairs all night. And Dad had another slap mark on his face. The next day, the living room was completely refreshed, but the house locks remained unchanged. I sat lifelessly at my small desk, but Dad was even more devastated than I was. To win Mom's favor, he woke up early to tutor me with my homework, only to suffer the consequences himself. He stared at me in utter disbelief. His adorable daughter looked up at him with innocent eyes. Lucas had seen photos of Sarah from her childhood, and his daughter looked exactly like her mother did at that age. This resemblance often made Lucas, as a father, soften his heart and indulge his child, but at this moment, he found himself at a loss for words. No matter how powerful or influential he was outside, managing companies of any scale, tutoring his child's homework at home could easily shorten his lifespan. Sweetheart, you can't just inherit your mom's good looks. Our family has vast fortunes to manage, and if you don't take over, how am I supposed to enjoy retirement with your mom? A light laugh drifted from upstairs. Mom leaned against the second-floor railing with captivating charm, her eyes still faintly reddened at the corners. Lucas gazed up at her obsessively. So beautiful, he wanted to merge with her, to devour her whole. The true mastermind behind Lincoln Investment Bank emerged, stirring ambitions among J-City's power players. In today's severely declining economy, Lincoln is practically walking money, though the real mastermind behind him has always kept a low profile. Few have seen him, and no one knows why he suddenly made a comeback recently, regardless of the reasons behind it. Invitations to various banquets have been flooding Lincoln's desk non-stop. As a high-profile figure, Dad got slapped across the face again, yet he clung to Mom's hand obsessively, planting a kiss and saying, "Darling, don't forget this side." Mom was too furious to speak, but Dad shamelessly leaned in closer, his smile masking eyes dark with intensity. "Why won't you marry me? Wouldn't it be good to be my wife? Give me a title, baby. Just give me a title, Sarah, whatever kind of man you like. That's exactly what I'll be. Just give me a little love." I looked down at my father, who was stubbornly insisting on his status downstairs, shook my head, and continued exploring my castle. Pushing open a pitch-black door, my mouth slowly formed an O shape. "Mom, is this a prison inside? There are big cages, handcuffs, and chains." Timidly hiding behind my mother while stealing glances at my father, who wore a smile uglier than crying. "Susan, Daddy's good girl, no matter what." Dad still wouldn't let Mom leave. Watching the car's shadow grow increasingly distant in the courtyard, Mom let out a disdainful sneer and immediately called someone to change the locks. Sitting in my car seat, I stared at Mom driving with starry eyes. She looked so cool. The car suddenly jolted as the vehicle behind relentlessly closed in. Mom furrowed her brows and floored the accelerator. The car was sandwiched like an Oreo, sparks flying from both sides. and I couldn't stop retching from the discomfort. Mom looked at me anxiously and heartbrokenly, then gave in. I ran to Mom crying, tugging, pulling, and biting at the ropes tied around her. They were so tight, digging cruelly into her flesh. Mom gently nudged my head with her chin. Sam, just say it, what do you want? Grabbed by the back of my neck and lifted up. I clenched my teeth tightly to keep the tears from falling. I am my parents' daughter. I mustn't disgrace them. My cheeks were pinched hard. Little Susan, why aren't you greeting anyone? Is this how your mother taught you? I opened my mouth and bit down hard on his finger. I hated Uncle Green and his family. They hovered around Mom like ravenous wolves, as if they wanted to tear a piece of flesh from her. Even though Mom was the most outstanding of her generation in the Green family, even though she was 100 times more capable than those uncles, she still hadn't fully secured control of the Green family's business. All because the elders clung to the futile hope that their useless sons might yet prove themselves. Sam, if you dare lay a finger on her, I swear I'll make your life a living hell. Sweetie, let go, don't eat dirty things. The hand gripping my neck gradually loosened, and I fell to the ground before quickly scrambling back to Mom's side. Seeing the red marks and abrasions on her wrists and ankles, my eyes welled up with tears. Stack after stack of documents were placed in front of Mom. While Uncle gave my little braid a playful tug, Sarah, let me give you some advice. A woman should be respectful and gentle, staying at home to care for her husband and children. What's the point of having such big ambitions? If you hadn't pushed me, I wouldn't have had to go this far. Sam, you should never have embezzled public funds or evaded taxes. I could tolerate your wild spending, but I can't let you drag Green Corp into ruin. He frantically grabbed Mom's hair. I used all my strength to bite and pry at his hand, but he just looked at me and grinned eerily. Sarah, even a cornered rabbit will bite. Let's make a bet. See who cracks first. You or little Susan, huh? What do you think of that wager? I need time to think. 2 hours, half an hour. I'll only give you half an hour. Don't blame me for being ruthless after half an hour. You're forcing me into this. You're forcing me, clutching my mother's neck. My body trembled uncontrollably with sobs as I whispered, I'm sorry, into her ear. Mom knows incredibly powerful martial arts. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't have had to compromise and be captured here, nor would she be subjected to Uncle's threats. Baby, the police uncle will be here soon. It's you who let the police uncle know we're in danger. You're saving Mommy. I widened my eyes. Mommy nodded firmly with certainty, her hands and feet constantly fidgeting. That Lucas knew a house alone couldn't trap them. He'd already planted a tracker on Susan. Children are always easy to overlook. Sam never expected Susan would have a tracker. The second hand ticked away, and Uncle grew visibly more agitated by the minute. He couldn't even wait half an hour before throwing the thick folder in front of Mom, trying to force her to sign. The moment I sensed Uncle trying to grab me, I bolted, but he still caught me and dragged me before Mom. My arm tightly pinned so I couldn't move, while the sound of scissors kept snipping behind me. Sarah, are you going to sign or not? Little Susan has such lovely hair. I wonder if she'll still be this pretty once it's all shaved off. Mom clenched her fists so tightly that the veins on her pale, slender fingers bulged. I kicked over the pile of folders with all my might, though I didn't know what exactly he was forcing Mom to sign. If she didn't want to, then she shouldn't. The scissors snipped shut, and my little braid instantly came undone, my dark hair scattered across the floor like petals flung by a celestial maiden. I stared blankly at the hair on the ground. Dad used to wash and blow-dry my hair with such care, and every day he'd meticulously comb and braid it for me. Mom's eyes reddened with fury, her entire body trembling. Sam, I won't let you get away with this. I swear. I flashed a big smile at Mom. Mom, Susan will protect you too. Uncle looked at Mom, suddenly threw me aside, picked up a nearby baseball bat, and walked straight toward her. Dead men tell no tales. Once you're dead, you'll take the blame for me. The baseball bat swung high, just as the shabby metal door was kicked open by Dad with a loud crash. Dad's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets seeing Mom on the ground and Uncle attacking, like Superman. He lunged forward and caught the baseball bat mid-swing before it could hit Mom. At last, the final strand of the rope was severed by Mom, who then used Dad's arm for leverage and kicked Uncle flying. Dad pounced on Uncle like a madman, punching him relentlessly. At first, Uncle could still resist, but soon he lay unconscious on the ground. letting dad pummel him mercilessly. Lucas, enough, you'll kill him if you keep going. So what, he deserves it. I nestled in my mother's arms. Feeling a bit afraid of my father at that moment, my mother sighed deeply and covered my eyes. Lucas, my wrist hurts. Dad knelt on one knee in front of Mom like a loyal dog on a leash, carefully examining her wound, then touched my hair with reddened eyes. I proudly showed off my row of tiny teeth. I protected Mom today. From now on, I can protect Mom together with Dad. Dad was moved to tears by me, but suddenly his pupils dilated as he turned around, holding Mom and me in his arms. Everything was chaotic. Mom's hands were covered in blood, and Dad, who was once invincible, lay collapsed on the ground. Sarah, I approached you on purpose because I've liked you for a very, very long time. Dad said he fell for Mom a long, long time ago, back when he wasn't CEO Lincoln but a high school student scraping by on scholarships. He stood silently smoking in the dim alley, watching Mom step out of a top-tier Maybach like a proud little swan. Poised and dignified as she asked for directions under the sunlight, at that moment, Dad said only one thought crossed his mind: raising Mom must be expensive. During his 4 years in college, he studied relentlessly, fought tooth and nail to intern at major investment banks, and ultimately chose without hesitation to start his own company. He met Mom again when returning to campus as an honored alumnus to give a speech. Coincidentally, he wore a white shirt and jeans that day. History has a way of repeating itself. Mom, as the head of Green Corporation, was invited by the university to award scholarships. Standing there once more, she asked Dad for directions. He recognized her instantly with just one glance, smiling until his eyes crinkled. Sure, sister, I'll take you there. Everything that followed happened naturally. He used his good looks to charm Mom, playing the role of a hard-working college student to win her sympathy, thus beginning his wonderful life as a gold-digging green tea boy. I lay by Dad's hospital bed, listening with great interest. Wow, I want to be just like Mom when I grow up, wearing suits and keeping lots and lots of men. Dad choked on his water and quickly covered my mouth, cautiously watching Mom's expression. Kids say the darndest things. Kids say the darndest things. Mom sat impatiently with her arms crossed, asking Dad how much longer he planned to stay in the hospital. My uncle was arrested and sent to prison. Mom hired the best lawyer to sue him. The elders of the Green family tried to plead for mercy on his behalf, but Mom directly threw his crimes in their faces, successfully silencing them. The Green family also underwent a major purge, and Mom firmly secured her position as the CEO of Green Corp. Dad injured his back because of Uncle and has been hospitalized for a month, refusing to complete the discharge procedures no matter what. If I leave the hospital, will you still come to see me, President Lincoln? Even if you don't leave the hospital, I won't be coming back. Mom finished speaking and stood up to leave without a trace of hesitation in her retreating figure, leaving only Dad and me staring at each other in bewilderment. I stealthily leaned close to Dad's ear and whispered, Dad, Mom actually knew your identity all along. She's just upset that you weren't honest with her. Dad's eyes lit up instantly, like a dog spotting a meaty bone, and he hugged me while showering me with kisses. My precious daughter, Dad's happiness in his later years depends on you now. Uncle was sentenced to many years in prison, and Dad said I probably wouldn't get to see him again in this lifetime. Later, Dad went to visit Uncle in prison. I picked up the phone and looked at Uncle, who had been shaved bald and was bruised. The kindergarten teacher said that after the founding of New China, men and women are equal, and the idea of women focusing on supporting their husbands and raising children is feudal remnants. Uncle, did all your education go to waste? The teacher also said that the capable should lead. My mom is more capable and earns more than you, so it should be Uncle staying home to support his wife and raise the children. At least that way, we'd still have money to spend. Dad had me wait outside for him. When he came out, he stroked my hair, his eyes filled with endless tenderness. Don't worry, sweetheart. Dad won't let anyone who hurt you and Mom get away with it. I don't know exactly what Dad did, but later Uncle became mentally ill and was locked away in a psychiatric hospital for life. At first, the elders of the Green family pointed at Dad's nose and cursed him, but eventually, they fell silent, because they rely on Mom for money to spend. Dad still lives in his own house, but even if he lounges around at home all day, Mom still kicks him out at night. But Dad never tires of it. your mom letting me into the house means something. It means she loves me, she totally does. Dad is truly a chameleon. When mom treats him slightly better, he beams with joy, but when she keeps him at arm's length, he sulks and slinks away. But now when mom and dad attend the same banquet, there are no uncles mocking dad for being incompetent. Instead, they go out of their way to flatter dad and mom, praising them as a perfect match, talented and beautiful, destined for each other, a heavenly couple, and wishing for their early reconciliation. Dad listened with delight, happily trailing behind mom. Mom was right after all. As long as you have value, as long as you stand high enough, people will naturally spout nonsense with their eyes wide open just to please you, to win mom's favor. Dad gritted his teeth and tutored me relentlessly, rain or shine. Even though he questioned his life choices every time and often felt like giving up, he still persevered. Finally, when I needed my parents' marriage certificate for elementary school enrollment, mom decided to save trouble and officially registered the marriage with dad. Dad excitedly transferred 2 more properties under my name while holding the red marriage booklet. Susan, your mom loves me. Why else would she marry me instead of just getting a certificate? She loves me. That very night, Dad moved his things back into our home. Mom called him an idiot, but the smile on her face gave her away. Watching my parents by the entryway from the living room, I rested my chin in my hands and shook my head. Adults and their contradictions. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.